code, you could maybe give us a clear definition of that. That would be helpful.
So a general guideline that we offer is policy is focusing on the what and the why. You're giving, in general, a broad, legally compliant statement about what needs to happen and why it's happening. Procedures, on the other hand, are typically how it gets done, right? Who the director is delegating that task to, or if he or she is doing it him or herself. The logistics, think of it like checklists or forms. A common example we offer is dealing with field trips, right? I've seen policies ranging from 1 page on field trips to, double digits, 12-page policies on field trips. And that is something the board definitely has discretion on. But at its base, you could have a field trip policy that's very brief and says, the what field trips shall be conducted. They shall be, for example, cost-effective and educational, something along those lines. You could do it in a couple paragraphs. And then the how it gets done could be chaperone ratios, right? It could be checklists of what needs to be done before this can happen. How early in advance do you need to get approval for your field trips? All the details. And so that's just a general example of how that could prevent the board from having so detailed a policy that it becomes more of a something that's taking up more time than you really have to devote to it. So ideally, if you have brief policies that are legally compliant, they get the job done, they are as specific as your purposes need them to be, you can have the detail in the director's hands. You hire great directors for a reason so that they can implement things, get them done in a timely fashion. So ideally, having shorter policies, making sure it's clear what's the board's job, what's the director's job. Ideally, it's a time saver. Procedures get updated more than policy typically. Some field trip policies, for example, will list every single field trip that's approved. That may be great until you need to change one, and maybe you don't have a board meeting scheduled. So that's an example of where it could be very helpful for the director to have the flexibility to change that, at a moment's notice. Maybe we left one out on accident, or we would love to add a new one. So that's just a brief example of the difference. But ideally, it's a time saver. Ideally, it is just for clarity.
How many districts do you provide the customization service for right now?
We just got another one today, so that brings us to 126.
Out of 195, is that correct?
146 districts technically, but that includes the School for the Blind, the School for the Deaf, the LNC York Institute, but yes.
And what is your cost? What is our cost for that?
We do it by ADM, so your attendance. And you're in the upper level of that being a larger system, so you would be at 19,500, so 19,500.
19,500 a
and
year.
That's a one-time fee.
Okay.
So it's a one-time fee. It's a flat rate. So you can call us every day with questions as we go through the process, and the rate's not going to change. So it would be half due at signing, half due upon completion, and then that price includes a free year of policy maintenance. So what that means is it's included in the price for us to host it online, to provide a hosting platform for you. So just kind of that aspect of maintenance, but also legal maintenance. So legal maintenance means things like receiving the memo in front of you. You would get those from us. You could ask us legal questions about those changes, customizing any new policies, conducting an annual audit every year. We would look at all of the policies required by law and make sure that you're still legally compliant. So we would customize it, maintain it, and then every year as a backstop, take a look at everything and make sure that none of the legally required policies have fallen out of compliance for any reason.
And the annual cost after the initial 19,500?
So 19,500, free year of maintenance, and then it would be an $8,000 maintenance fee going forward.
After
3-year maintenance?
After.
So a 1 year or a one-time payment of 19,500, then a free year of maintenance, and then an $8,000 maintenance fee going forward. And that's
starting the 4th year.
Third
year.
So year one, just for clarity, your next year, let's say it was next year. Next year's 19.5, that covers 18-19 and 19-20. So then in 2021, it would be the $8,000.
And that depends on how long it takes. We've had people take longer than a year to get it done, but we're not going to ask for that second payment until the board has completed the process. So it could take you 1.5 years, and then you would actually be getting 1.5 years plus a free year of maintenance, if that makes sense. So it's just whenever you're done. We've had people do it as quickly as 8 months. We've had people take 1.5 years to get it done, a little longer than 1.5 years in some cases. but the rate doesn't change. And again, any questions that come up, we pride ourselves on being very responsive.
Dr. Allen,
Yes, sir.
as far as policies that are not federal or state, what does that look like? So when you guys, I mean, obviously you're going to review those every year to make sure we're in compliance and if something's changed with those, but other policies in our school system, what does that look like when it comes to your review or assistance with that?
That really varies on a case-by-case basis. Some boards, and I think this is a good model, I believe it's Hickman right now, is in a really good kind of flow in terms of getting things done. A lot of boards want to take about 10 to 20 policies a meeting, and so they'll break it up like that. They'll say, hey, we're going to review these 10 to 20 policies in a meeting. Can you also do a review and give us your input as to whether or not these need to be updated or changed? So we can work with you if you have a schedule like that in mind. We can set up a different schedule. The statutory obligation is just the board has to review its policies every 2 years. So however it works for y'all to get that done, we can definitely work something out.
Well, from a fee standpoint, well, I mean, what does that
Oh,
look
it's the
like?
same.
Okay.
You could call us 0 times a year, you could call us 200 times a year, and the fee's gonna be the same.
Okay.
If we need you to come as you are today, what's the fee for your coming to Chattanooga?
We're not charging you anything.
And you would continue to do that as needed?
I think I might have to have a conversation with my boss if it was like a once a week thing. She might kind of wonder where I was going. But that would typically be on an as needed basis. We've done that for some boards if it's a rare thing where they need us, we don't charge, but if it did suddenly become a once a month occurrence, we might have to chat about that.
And we could always Skype if we needed.
Oh, definitely. And honestly, most board members call us. Sometimes they have, it's just whatever works well for y'all. Some people prefer a point person, sometimes the board secretary, sometimes the director is the point person, but it's frequently, multiple board members plus a board secretary and or the director. Just depends on how you guys like to handle policy things.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes, right now, this is not a question for you, I guess it's a question for the superintendent. Right now, Lee always worked on the policies with Scott, and I correct you too, obviously there. And so whoever took Lee's place, are they not going to be doing policies anymore?
Yeah, they will. So right now, and I'll let Scott chime in, with our policies, any state law changes that happen that she's speaking to, we have done those every year. But I think any potential benefit or consideration would be kind of the day-to-day, the district level policies that are going on. Those aren't as not annually reviewed.
I know we've reviewed quite a few of them since I've been on the board. Am I correct?
Well, yes, and what Hamilton County has done is when there has been some issue that we need to drill down to specifically, we'll have a policy meeting, and it's hard to say what's going to happen because Lee's not here anymore, and Lee's experience is unique, or was unique, because he was a principal for many, many years, central office administrator for many, many years, and so he could see the operational impact of these policies. Because Hamilton County is so large, and you have so many different areas, there's been a need to have sort of a Hamilton County fingerprint on these policies. But that's not going to change if the board were to go with TSBA, because what you described here is there's the TSBA model policy. It gets reviewed by the board, and you can put your own tweaks on it. So that continues in place. What I think you have to recognize is that without Lee's very unique expertise, there's a gap here. I can review the laws, and I do that, but frankly, I can't keep up with them as quickly as Ben can. And so there is a great resource here that they're providing. But what y'all are going to have to do, and what they're suggesting here, is there needs to be an active process whereby you go through and look at the state policies and tweak them. And it's a bilateral thing, by the way. A couple of years ago, when Hamilton County was changing its bullying and harassment policies, we identified some things that TSBA needed to change. And so I spoke with Ben, and so our changes have been incorporated into what they do. So really what we're talking about here, Ms. Thurman, is we're adding another voice to the conversation to make the policy better.
Okay. And, is that enough?
Yeah.
You have any more, Ms. Thurman?
I was wondering if that was in a job description when somebody came, I don't know, I was gonna say, I know institutional knowledge, you can't replace it, and I know that.
If you go back to the merger, and increasingly that's the conversation that just the two of us are having. After the merger, the board retained TSBA to rewrite the policies, and so you had the TSBA policy service for a long time. Dr. Robert Smith kind of took that over and realized that the model policies were good for medium-sized districts, but there was a lot of substantial stuff that needed to be done from the Hamilton County side, and so he sort of took that over. When he retired and Rick Smith took over the deputy superintendent's office, he took that over. And TSBA has been very good at providing that office with a lot of input. So in a sense, they've been part of the conversation all along. This is a little bit more about making it them a formal part of the conversation.
Mrs. Lennon, and then Mr. Wingate again, and then Ms. Critson, Jones.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was my understanding when I was elected to serve on the board that one of the responsibilities of a school board member was policy, was the governance of policy, and that was what we were supposed to do. And so that is kind of weighed heavy on me, that it's really not the job of central office, but that it's the job of the school board.
Correct.
To policy, and then it's the superintendent or the director of schools to carry out those policies.
Definitely, yes ma'am. And what we found there are some larger systems that we have as subscribers, and often what they tell us is Rutherford County, for example, they have an in-house attorney and they have outside counsel. But those two positions have so much going on that they appreciate having extra input, extra expertise. As Scott mentioned, we're constantly reviewing changes to law, trying to keep things as up-to-date as policy, in our policies as possible. So we are just really another resource for the central office, for the board itself, to be as efficient as you guys can be.
Okay, Mr. Wingate?
Rhonda, I was going to ask you just from your experience when you said policies and reviewing those. In my short time, and I'm just asking because I obviously just been here 2 years, when Lee has presented a policy, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, typically when we've gotten it in our packet, it says this is for your review because there's been a change at the state level or whatever, right?
Yep.
So when we talk about reviewing policies, how much of that though really has been us reviewing policy, taking a chunk of those or other than a scenario maybe coming up where it's brought to our attention that, hey, the policy might not be adequate here. And like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly certain when Lee gives us something, usually, like I said, it's kind of, I don't know if mandate is the right word, but I guess it is, been handed down already. Is that right, or is that what you're talking about?
I know we have taken chunks of them before and gone through the whole policy book at some point. We haven't done that.
We've done that.
We've done that.
Okay.
Maybe not this board,
Yeah.
Right.
as it is
We have
today,
done
but we have done this.
Okay.
First 2 years,
And, but there's sometimes you don't know you have a problem until you have a problem.
Right.
And times change, things change, and so therefore the policies do need to be tweaked sometime, but that's even gonna happen even with their help. We're gonna find out that stuff at our local level is gonna have to be changed, maybe not so much at the state, but at our level, because we have such a diverse school system, different size schools and all that kind of thing.
Okay, Ms. Jones, then Ms. Robinson.
I was just gonna say, Kathy kind of started this conversation about us being elected to govern policy. And then piggyback on what Joe said, I know when I was first elected to the board, I actually served on the policy committee. We met, I feel like once a month, starting now, I can't remember, because we met like monthly. Our committees met monthly, and we would pull chunks of them and review them. And that was really kind of depending on the chair at that time too. I think it kind of was at the chair's discretion how he wanted to handle the committees. And then I know when our committee chair changed, that changed a little bit, and then we went into not having committees per se so much. I do think that TSBA does a great job with providing us support. But I also do think that we should actually take the time and look and try to, I think we could do that ourselves. I know that when the whole Uruguay incident happened, we did that as a team. We revised that policy. And Lee and Scott guided us, but we told them what we wanted it to look like. And we hashed it out and with each other and everybody else, with the public watching, and we changed that policy ourselves. And so I do think that there are some instances in which we could do that and still utilize TSBA. I agree that everybody has to be paid for everything they do. So this is no knock to anyone, but $19,000 is a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and I know typically I'm probably not the person to say that all the time because I'm just like, for the kids, let's do it. But that's a lot of money. So I think it's a great option for us to think about and kind of process. Do we have to have an answer for that today? Okay. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. But I do think that that's something maybe we could figure out in another policy meeting or in another work session, what it looks like for us, pros and cons to that, what it would look like with them, pros and cons, and maybe figure out what is going to be a best fit for Hamilton County. But I can just see the headlines. I'm going to see the headlines. I see them now for the morning anyway with us talking about it. We're trying to spend $19,000 on a policy advisor. So I just want us to maybe just look at all options and what we as, and what our own skill set can do. Before we go that far.
I'll make a brief comment and then go to Ms. Robinson and Mr. Testman. The reason we cut back on some of these committees was Dr. Tammy suggested that we cut back, that we were at our strategic planning meeting at Central High School, that we cut back on some of our mini meetings. And I'm like, Ms. Mosley Jones, we met once a month, every month. And so she thought we were meeting too much. Ms. Robinson?
Yeah. Well, so I think that what we all agree on is that we have a lot of work to do on our policies. Like that's no, I don't think that's any secret. I think we all agree on that. I think that like spending the time and doing the work, I am all for it. If it means adding another meeting to the calendar, I'm happy to do that. But I guess I'm at a point as a board member where I do want to start digging into our local policies and, really evaluating whether or not they need to be changed, whether they're outdated, whether, things have changed in general in this world that affect those policies. But also, frankly, like it's time to start adding some new policies. And, with, closing the opportunity gap and doing the work that the board is committed to, I think we're going to be faced more and more with the need to start really finessing and or adding new policies. So I'm grateful for this conversation, and I see a lot of value in it.
Thank you, Mr. Tester.
Well, I just wanted to mention that, in the past, I was there when we merged and those things took place. We went from, at the merger, a manual that was one volume. And after the merger, it was just a few years, we had a three volume book of policies and procedures. And those end up on a principal's desk. And they are things that principal, he has to become greatly aware of. Probably the greatest thing we did to help principals was to take those manuals and put them to the digital form where they can be looked at by computer, by cell phone, various things like that. We need to make sure whatever we're doing is make sure that the digital form is updated immediately. Because things happen in schools, and probably one of the greatest resources for us as a board are our principals and our teachers when it comes to policies and how they affect the school. We found that out when we made some of those changes about visitors in school and who can be allowed to go on field trips. It created almost a disaster at the elementary level. We need to make sure when we make policy changes that we take a prudent time for sure, but allow some principals and some teachers to look at them, especially those things that can impact that school level. We need to do that. But I think this board, and I think Hamilton County Schools has been a key player in the state of Tennessee in maintaining and developing policies. We are one of the counties that take it very seriously of what we're doing, and we have been. You had mentioned Mr. Bennett, Robert Smith. Robert Smith was an educator, but he went back to school, became a lawyer, and he worked on our staff for many years. It was good to have, and so I think we need to know that historically this county has been very prudent in doing its homework and creating new policies and procedures, and I think we need to continue doing that for sure. The cost does bother me though.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson, again?
Sure. A question based on what David just was saying. What type of training do we do for our principals on policies?
Yeah, so at the beginning of each year, we bring them together and make sure they're aware of any changes or updates around, most times it's the law changes that may impact them in any kind of way or have implications for them on any kind of way. So that is at least a once a year thing that occurs at the beginning.
Ms. Landon?
I was just gonna see if anybody else had any more questions.
And I'll just add one more thing. So I think as TSB mentioned, there are constant changes that come down from the state. So obviously you've got the beginning of the year, but constantly if something changes, the principals are made aware of the implications of that on their building.
Well, I was just at the TSBA law school or a law class this past Friday. I mean, there are 3 policies from the state level that will change July 1.
Yes.
And I don't know that I've actually heard us as a board even discuss those changes. So, you know, I could be wrong, but I don't think that we've discussed those. But they're mostly around special needs, I believe.
One really very much talked about one is regarding corporal punishment on special education students. That's gotten a lot of news coverage. The way corporal punishment is administered, if it is administered to special needs students, is changing. That one is effective July 1st. Trying to think of some others. This isn't special needs, but there's a new zero tolerance offense being added, so that could have impacts for manifestation hearings, what have you, in regard to any type of disciplinary action. The truancy law obviously has changed recently. We did policy last month on that. So yes, you're right, there are things changing all the time. That's why we go to every State Board of Education meeting. We closely review the drafts they have on first reading, on second reading. And I think that's really where districts see that as a time-saving, cost-saving factor. So if someone calls with a question, I can confidently state, I've been at every State Board meeting. I've looked at the first draft, I've looked at the second draft, I know what passed on final reading. I can tell you what it says in black and white, but I can also tell you what the conversation around that legal change was, and that may or may not influence the way they want to implement the policy. So I think that's something that not everyone has time to send their staff to do, to sit in those meetings, or to sit in on the committee meetings on Capitol Hill when there's an education committee meeting, that sort of thing.
And, you know, sorry, just my point with that is that as a board, like, it's important that we understand those policy changes, and if we're not spending the time discussing them as they come up, then what happens is our board falls behind, and our board is supposed to be looking to the future. Like, when we're setting policy, it's for the point of being ready for when the future hits. And so, so I don't know, as our policy committee chair, you know, I don't know what that looks like, but it seems like with all the changes that are happening with state legislation, even on a federal level as well, and then if we are going to dive into, you know, looking at our own policies, like, I would expect that we probably should be meeting monthly.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
Ms. Thurman?
So when these things like come up in Nashville, I mean, I just tell you, I'm just not going to sit and listen to the meetings in Nashville. I'm just not. And anybody that does, I just think sit home and scratch athlete's feet or something. I can't imagine sitting and listening to that go on and on for weeks.
I'm not sure where you're going with this.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'm just saying, who's supposed to let the board know when these things are changing? Because I mean, if things are coming up about special ed, is somebody in our special ed department keeping up with that? Do they get notified from the state? Okay, then they need to let us know when things need to be changed, because there's no way that I can keep up with this stuff. I mean, I just can't. It's just ridiculous to even assume that we're going to do that.
Dr. Johnson now.
And to that point, understand that that policy development comes at you in probably at least two and probably three ways. A third way that we saw recently was you have people in the community who say, we don't understand your policies, you need to make them more accessible to those in the street. And so there was a big push to rewrite certain policies because there were kids who said, I don't know, if I'm being bullied, I don't know what to do. And so really, this board did a comprehensive rewrite that really has spread elsewhere because the model policy is written for board members, not necessarily for kids. No offense to TSBA. Another push comes from your educators who want to operationalize your policies. And so they're saying, you know, this board policy doesn't make sense given what we do, okay? A third push comes from the General Assembly or the federal government or the state board. And through various professional organizations, your administration finds out about that, and so it all kind of percolates together. What TSBA is proposing is that they work to pull all those voices together in a way that Lee did, and before him, to some extent, Rick did, but it's kind of rare if you don't have that institutional knowledge. I'll give you some real experience that I'm having right now with one of my other clients representing Washington County Schools. They've just gone on with the TSBA policy service, and the thing that they're discovering is that this process gives them a systematic approach to reviewing their policy. Now, you could do that, but one of the problems that I think you do if you don't have someone who is walking you through deliberately is that there are a whole bunch of policies where you think, well, there hasn't been a change in the law, we'll skip to the next one. And one of the things that Ms. Lynn's going to talk about later is the transportation piece, which hasn't been changed the law on transportation, but over 20 years, the way Hamilton County changes transportation, does transportation, has changed mightily. The model policies are fine, except they don't match with what we do. And so what they're proposing here is a systematic approach where y'all sit down and you think, okay, does this policy comply with the law? That's my job, that's their job. Does it make sense to you? Is it what y'all want to do? That's your job. And so here's the second thing I want to say. Food for thought. You've got, in my opinion, you've got to have a voice on the policy committee, and it could be Dr. Johnson or it could be someone with school operations who is intimately familiar with what is unique about Hamilton County. Because sometimes your model policy needs to have some specific consideration for this county. A really good example is the way you do school zoning. We have some very specific language that we put in there because the domestic bar, the divorce bar in Hamilton County has been taking advantage of school zoning issues in this county, that y'all have for years, so we've had to tighten it up. I don't need any other county that has a problem. Anyway, food for thought. So TSBA gives you a systematic approach, but don't lose the operational voice.
Well, I know that, but I'm talking about, she said that things are changing at this. Who gets notified on this? Who gets notified at the school? Who here is going to be responsible for that now? If Lee's not here, it's not
Yeah,
I want to know who is going to when the state changes a policy. I mean, they're not going to call and say, hey, Ron, we changed policy. They may shoot out an email, you know, 1 of 75 we get a day, and we may miss it or whatever. But somebody here is going to have to be responsible for that piece of the puzzle now that Lee's not here. Is it going to be you, Scott? Is it going to be the TSBA? Do they send out when things change?
They do send out when things change. TSBA sends it out.
Well, I read the TSBA letters, but I mean, I'm saying.
And then we used to get, well, I know we used to get them from here. So whoever's getting lead spot is not going to do. I mean, I'm confused why we feel like nobody's equipped to do that.
Yeah, so we'll continue with state law. I think the conversation here is we'll continue to have a person prepared to do that between Bradshaw and so the reality of the policy is, back to Scott's point, different policies impact different departments in different types of ways, and so there's always got to be that cross collaboration, because if it's it could be even with a point person, that point person is going to have to say, if it's a teaching and learning policy, hey Justin, Jill, how is this going to impact your particular area? So we'll continue with that piece. It's no question about the law, what changes. There's a policy tonight that was prompted out of Nikki's office in regards to the family engagement that Lee worked on through and with the kids. So we'll continue with that process. I think the question is, do we want to take a systematic approach to reviewing all policy? Because the policies that, and again, I've been here 10.5 months, the policies I see us review, I've seen to this point are more because of the law change. And so the law changes, we review the policy. We always make that change and always stay in compliance from the standpoint of the changes that are there, and that will continue, but it's more than getting on track. So I heard several of you through, you know, it is going to take more meetings around policy and setting a calendar and considering, you know, TSBA or stepping back and saying we can do this ourselves and setting a schedule for it. That we're going to review this chunk over this period of time. So I think that's just a conversation you all have to have with the board, and however you all see fit for us to do it, we'll carry that forward.
Can I kind of clarify something though, just to make sure that your question's answered, because I still have a little bit of the same question. Dr. Bradshaw is our new COO,
Correct.
which is technically replacing Lee, but he may not handle policy. Perhaps Nakia handles it. I'm sorry, Dr. Townsend?
Dr. Town.
I'm so sorry. Okay, the doctor. Point is that someone with an expertise in policy on the cabinet will handle it. Okay, just want to make sure I understand. Thank you.
Can I ask one thing? Do you guys inform every system when a law changes that affects them?
We send out an email, so the one in front of you from January, that's an example of the version that goes to our policy subscribers. The difference is the policy subscribers are getting our model policies attached to them, and that may include some discretionary, not mandatory areas, if that makes sense. So anytime there's a legally mandated change, yes, everyone's made aware of it. Not everyone gets every single model policy we have.
I do know a couple of years ago, Ms. Ford will, I think, verify this. I was at a meeting, as much like Ms. Robinson, a legal meeting. I found out that the bullying harassment policy changed in the state. And they mentioned it, we had no notice of it. And so when I looked and asked back, it had been sent to the IT department, not to the board secretary. And so I did make the request that it be sent to the board secretary because she keeps up with all of it. And so we were not getting it for some period of time. It was being sent to the wrong person. Who do you normally send it to?
Typically, it's the chairman, the director, and the board secretary, and then anyone additional that you would like. If you would like the whole board.
We researched it, we got one copy and it went to IT.
I'm so
And they
sorry
didn't know
about
what to do with it, so.
I've never gotten a copy.
Have you yet? Since then, have you gotten any copy?
that. I'll double check that and make sure
Yeah.
it's not going to
I've never gotten
spam
any
somehow or
board yet.
bouncing. Okay.
I've never got any board chair. Okay. Ms. Lynn?
Thank you very much. I think you've given us some good food for thought, and good information, and that I know that we as a board now need to have a meeting to probably next month to start reviewing policy and discuss how we need to move forward with this. And I know that Dr. Johnson wanted to talk about the equity task force, but I want to thank you so much for coming in and providing us with such great information. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, ladies. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Johnson?
Sure. So I think we're ready to pull up. I know there's been a lot of conversation about equity and closing the opportunity gap. So I want to take a moment just to kind of go through a little brief presentation and then give you all an opportunity as a board to really determine where it is we want to head as far as next steps are concerned. So we always talk about being the fastest improving, and you always set that trajectory for us. And we're committed to that, and know that that means that at the highest performance student, the middle performance student, the average performance student, the lowest performance student, we've got to move everybody really across the board, and that becomes our focus. We've been talking to our principals about becoming a high reliability organization, and what we've been talking about with them are these 5 principles that really permeate business and industry. You see in particular in hospitals and airlines and different industry areas where the margin of error is so slim. And I think there's a correlation between the margin of error being slim in business and industry and the margin of error being so slim when we're talking about our children. So what we've been talking to them about is the reluctance to simplify, and essentially what we've been saying with that with principles is, you know, don't simplify the issue down. don't answer a problem away. Dig in and find the root cause of the issue. We've been talking about preoccupation with failure. And when we talk about preoccupation with failure, what we've been speaking to them about is that to be anticipatory, to think about what could go wrong, to anticipate those things, and to be preoccupied with those things, to keep those things from happening again. We've been talking about commitment to resilience, and so this resiliency thought, this grit, the determination as you're implementing things to try again. Also the deference to expertise. We've been talking about the importance of bringing the experts around the table. So if it's in a content or curriculum area, don't think as the principal or the general practitioner, so to speak, you've got all the answers. Be willing to get that math expert there. Be willing to get that science expert there, to sit around with your teachers and to figure out how we do it right for children. And then with sensitivity operation, we've been talking about the culture and being mindful of how your building operates, who's where, and how you need to go forward. So we've been really talking to principals really throughout the year about how reliability organized, and I'll share some learning from industry around that and its applicability to schools. So this is a little bit of a timeline, and I want to back up and make sure that we are, the way I understand things, that things are clear. In the spring, Dr. Howlander mentioned a little bit earlier, but the board identified closing the opportunity gap as a strategic area of focus. And specifically, the statement said intentional and focused support on our most at-risk students in schools reflects our commitment to equity and success for all students. And the board's adopted strategic plan in the spring of 2017 that was there, focused on closing the opportunity gap. Obviously, I was hired in the summer. In the winter, we hired or elevated Dr. Drake, Chief Equity Officer, and then we looked at closing the opportunity gap in the spring and launched a task force to really dig into that. And then as we step into the summer, this is our discussion today around what closing the opportunity gap is and the future direction of the task force. And we'll ask for a formal vote. So the state has a focus on this. The national level, there's a focus on this, and I want to make sure we come to commonality around the way we see closing the opportunity gap. But the state, in their strategic plan, their vision, they talk about districts and schools in Tennessee will exemplify excellence and equity, and such that all students are equipped with the knowledge and skills to successfully embark upon their chosen path of life. And really, I want to focus on the word all. That word all is not partisan. It's not ethnic. It is all. Making sure that all students are equipped with the knowledge and skills to successfully embark upon their chosen path in life. Simply stated, educational equity means that all children receive what he or she needs to develop the full academic and social potential. And obviously some things there are elevated, equally high outcomes, examining biases, looking at students' unique gifts and talents and their interests. I think it's important also to take a step back. Again, I don't want to go backwards, but I'll go backwards to go forward. This is based on the board's adoption in the spring of 2017. So as we go forward, let's look at the data. This is where the district has been. When I arrived, this is the district data. And obviously literacy is a definite bright spot. The CTE concentration, CTE concentrators or completers is as well an area where we peaked closer into and prompted our launch of Future Ready Institutes based on that performance. But when we look systemically at the all, we see that we're not growing students to the level that we would desire. And so as we talk about being the fastest improvement, we know we have to move in that area. Looking more closely at achievement, so you have growth, which deals with how you move a student year over year, and achievement is how students perform in regards to the bar that's been set. And so when we look at achievement in comparison ourselves to the state, we see where we are. And math being an area in which we are outperforming the state, but in other areas we're trailing, have been trailing by a percentage point or two, some areas 3, 4. And so definitely we know with growth and achievement, we want to move those things forward. You can't close gaps without digging down and getting very granular and beginning to look at subgroups. So one of the things with ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is from the federal level, that comes down to the state, is they hold us accountable to our performance gaps. And so when we talk about gaps, they look at, there's a super group called BHN, the Black, Hispanic, Native American, that they look at. They look at economic disadvantage, EL, students with disability. All those areas are really broken out. And they look at your performance in comparison. And if you are not closing that gap year over year, you essentially get a mark against you, so to speak. And that has been the accountability framework for some time, even with the inception of ESSA, even before that, ESEA, that this was the framework in looking at different subgroups and how they perform. So one of the things we will be even more intentional with doing going forward is getting down to the very granular performance of the district. So I kind of started out with the high, now we dig into how things are performing. And I need to say this about the data. This is just the data, you know. The data is just a starting point. And so, you know, when we look at this, you know, it doesn't, it should create urgency, but also we understand that it is a springboard for us to learn from as we move forward as a system. Looking at suspensions, again, we're just kind of looking at the data because this is another area in which is looked at. We kind of see how it's broken down. You see females versus males, priority schools, Asian, Hispanic. We see this suspension data kind of broken down, and we have an obligation, I feel strongly, to be mindful of this and determine how we respond while understanding that students come to us from different walks of life and different situations and circumstances. The ultimate goal is how do we get them in school, and not just get them in school, but keep them in school. Again, focused on the board's desire to close the opportunity gap, I would zero in on this slide in particular. This candidly is my favorite slide. A point of data that's not on here is that 70% of our students last year that participated in an early post-secondary opportunity, which would be AP dual enrollment or dual credit, 70% of those students went on to post-secondary. And that's not on this slide, but I'm just giving you the statistic, which would be an indicator that when a student is in an early post-secondary opportunity, the propensity for them to move on to the next level is significant. When we talk about opportunity gap, this slide right here is an opportunity gap slide in every subgroup. When we know 70% of our students that participate in AP dual enrollment, dual credit, or get a certificate, when we know that students that have that opportunity go on, we need to accelerate this really quickly. And so even looking at every subgroup from Asian to white to all students to all of our other races, Black, Native American, we're not getting students in AP dual enrollment, dual credit classes the way we need to. When we talk about closing the opportunity gap, this has to be a focus, in particular when we know that 70% of students that have this opportunity go on to post-secondary. So here are some recommendations, and I will say a caveat to this. I will make these recommendations, but I think the next slide is important for the board because I need to understand, you all set the vision direction for the district. And so in the spring, when you adopt the strategic plan that says closing the opportunity gap, it's important for me to understand if that's still a priority. My recommendations are this, that as we go forward, we provide multiple open task force meetings where all board members can attend if they desire, and we would work to schedule those. The second thing I would say is allow us to recast the net for facilitator and bring to the board 2 or 3 options to discuss. I think some of the, I will use this example, and I probably shouldn't, but I've gotten to a point now where I feel comfortable doing this, having been here. When my mother got sick, and this is an area very near and dear to me with 2 students in this system. When my mother got sick and was dealing with her heart issues, one of the most fascinating things to me is that there were so many different specialists with the heart. There were specialists that refer specialists, very granular. And in the medical field, it's a norm to have a specialist of a specialist of a specialist and to get the exact answer. And we got to have that same intentionality in the field of education. And what I would submit is that we look at bringing an external facilitator with expertise. I know there was cost on out there of $290,000. We've had a chance since that meeting. Again, I framed to you as a board that we had engaged in conversation with the Alves group. We have engaged in some sense because we want to come to the board first with that. That cost is less than 1/3 of that, but I would submit that we go even deeper and recast it and look at facilitators and bring forth some for your consideration in July. The third thing I would say is that we slow down the process. To make sure that we're on the same page in regard to what closing the opportunity gap is. We don't want something fast, we want something that sticks. And I'll use a very specific example of something that struck me when I talk about opportunity. I was at the Future Ready Institute launch with Blake Freeman, who's done phenomenal work with Future Ready Institute, and a young lady came up to me from Saudi Daisy Middle School. And the young lady said to me, with her mother, who coincidentally is a bus driver, her and her mother came up to Blake and I standing there, and she said, I want to go to Brainerd. And she said, I want to go to Brainerd because they have the medical program, the emergency responder, first responder program that I want to be in. And I looked at her and I said, well, you can go. You got to figure out how to get there. but you can go. We got slots for you. And that's what opportunity to me looks like. And so we want to make sure that whatever we do, it reflects what is important to you all as a board and a community. So those will be my recommendations, but I need to back away from those recommendations. I need to ask you, this is the conversation that I would love for each of you as a board to speak to with where you are right now. Is closing the opportunity gap by ensuring educational equity becomes a reality for all students a priority and a strategic focus area for the board. Again, educational equity is not a partisan issue, and I think it's important to go back to this because the narrative has not been one that's reality. Educational equity means that each child receives what he or she needs to develop to his or her full academic and social potential. Every single child. So I think I need to know from you if this is what you want. If yes, do we still want the task force to go forward? If yes, are we willing to defer to expertise? Then yeah, and then if so, what are the characteristics that we desire in a facilitator? I will also add this, I commend this board because there are a lot of folks that aren't even having the conversation. And so I commend this board for being willing to have the conversation. I commend you in the spring of 2017 for selecting closing the opportunity gap as an area and for saying that educational equity for all is a focus. And so I think for me, as I come in Pittsburgh, I want to make sure that I'm clear and that we're on the same sheet of music as we move forward as a collective body to understand where you are. So I would open it up at this time, Chairman Highlander, to really get dialogue from each board member on this area and to understand if this is still a focus for us going forward.
Got 2 board members already chimed in. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, very much. Let me say, from my understanding of equity, it is not merely an urban issue. It's not an ethnic issue. We just hypothetically, if you look at a couple of things, some of my students in my district go across the river to Sail Creek. Sail Creek does not have a football stadium, and that is an inequitable situation athletically. And it's not racial and it's not urban. It's meeting the needs of every child the best we can. I do want to say some things that Ms. Thurman has referred to before several times is, and I commend some of our philanthropic groups trying to work with organizations. Part of the problems are families, and we need to support and uplift these families through our philanthropic organizations. We don't have the power to do that as an education board. We can maybe encourage, but we don't have that power. I think Mr. Galloway and then Mr. Smith.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Highlander. You know, Dr. Johnson, I was when I was excited about this when we talked about it in 2017. I'm still behind doing it. Here's my thing. You know, I'll say this. When we brought Dr. Johnson here, I didn't vote for Dr. Johnson to come here. Now, I wasn't against Dr. Johnson, but I felt like we were doing some good things in our system. But he's come here, and I mean, the guy works all the time on trying to improve things. If you ever talk to him 10 minutes, you know where his heart is. So my whole thing on it is, if you feel like we need to go in that direction by getting more expertise, I'm for that. But one of the things you've already done that I'm excited about, I think this is going to be a factor. You just mentioned it again in this thing about somebody coming to you for Brainerd. This future ready idea. Yeah. You look on this suspensions and expulsions list, and you see this high rate of kids that are being suspended in these priority schools. Some of them are being suspended because they just don't have any ambition toward what's going on. Part of that comes from the family situation Ron has brought up before. And I'm not throwing stones at folks. It's just part of what it is. They're in situations that are tough. And I know because I taught for a long time and I dealt with that. And when you get involved with families in those situations, those families are appreciative and they're behind you 100%. There's a lady sitting here tonight that's come in. I see her back there, Miss Chambliss. Her girls played for me. And we spent a lot of time working together on things, and she's a great mom. and worked hard, and I worked hard with her, and those girls are successful. But people struggle with these things, and when we get to addressing, and Rhonda's brought this up before too, part of what's wrong with the educational process is in the classroom where we can't get control. You're a lot more likely to get control when kids are interested in what's going on. So this whole future ready thing, I'm excited about. This business about what to do with it, about the gap that's there and what needs to be done. I'm for supporting you, Dr. Johnson, whatever you decide to do, because I think that's why we brought you here. I'm impressed with what you've done, and I appreciate what you've done. Not only you, but your staff, and that includes Dr. McDade, who's gone now, who still mentioned it, But, thank you for that, and that's where I stand on it.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Smith, and then Ms. Thurman, then Ms. Robinson.
Let me just kind of clarify for myself what I think that I heard. First of all, Dr. Johnson, I applaud Dr. Gray, and I don't want to embarrass you, but we've got such talented people that I think you have brought in. Dr. Gray leading that task force, and I look at the names on that task force. Some of them I know intimately, that are very qualified, bright, smart people. And then our own chairman, Dr. Highlander, and I won't say too many nice things about him. I'm
Not
just
too
joking
bright.
about that. But him serving on that task force, so let me make sure that I understood what I think I just heard, is that we're kind of slowing the train down a little bit, if you will, and we're going to give Dr. Gray and this task force an opportunity to look at the gaps, and I believe, we at times disagree on things, and my colleague to my right, sometimes I'm afraid she's going to slap me. But I know this about my colleague to the right, is that we both want the same thing at the end of the day, and that's what's best for every kid, regardless of whether they're from Yale or from jail. It don't make no difference. So if I understand you correctly, give that task force a chance to look at this, explore the gaps, bring back those thoughts to us, and before any outside agency is agreed upon, that the board will discuss that and discuss how that funding is going to take place. But none of that happens until first we give Dr. Gray and her very talented group of folks on that task force to look at that. Now, is that what I heard?
I think a big part of that is right. Correct me, Dr. Cameron, we had 3 meetings. Yeah. Okay. So they've had 3 meetings. They began to dig into some data and look at not just some data, a lot of data, and dig into some of those things. I think they're at a point where it is probably beneficial, and I'm sure it's beneficial, to have an external lens. I think the question we need, what I would propose, and I put the 3 things that I proposed back up there, that we recast that net and we look at bringing 2 to 3, 4, or 5 options to you all next month, and say, let's look at these folks. Where are they? I think at that point, obviously, we'll be even firmer on any type of funding for that. I think, again, I want to go back and clarify, the price tag has been floated out there, was not ever a price tag we came forward with. What we said is we hadn't had conversations with them. And so we hadn't had any conversation with that group. Once we had conversation with that group, we found out that price tag was significantly less than the one that was being floated around. So I think it's important to understand that, really where we are, and to have a national level expertise, or somebody seeing it from a different lens, or even somebody locally that has expertise in that area from the standpoint of having done it in other systems. Those are all things that I think we want to consider and bring some options forward to the board for discussion. This is not an area board that I could go it alone. This is something that you committed it to collectively as a body, and if we're still committed to, I want to know where you are, and I want to follow your lead on it.
Okay, I don't know why I'm not coming.
Somebody got to cut a mic off.
Just because I'm not sure you answered my question. But before any of that takes place, that comes to this body to say, here's our different options, board, what do you think? I guess that's my question.
The answer is yes. So bullet 2, allow the administration to recast the net 4 facilitator and bring to the board 2 to 3 options to discuss and consider in July.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And let me just say, when we do, we are looking at outside funding, not from our budget. Is that correct? Is that not correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Thurman?
Yes, there's a few things. One of the biggest problems I guess I had with this whole thing is why the task force had to meet in secret. I never did understand that. I don't understand what they're talking about, that the newspaper couldn't be there, Chattanooga.com couldn't be there, or other candidates running for school board couldn't be there, or whatever. What was going on that we couldn't allow the public to do. We had, some elected officials in there, and of course they weren't violating the sunshine law because there was no 2 of the same body there. But I don't like when we do things like that. We talk about transparency. Unified Ed, they were all about transparency until it becomes something that they liked, and then all of a sudden there's no transparency wasn't a problem. So that's number 1. I don't like that idea. Number 2, it seems that this whole thing's going a whole lot with the Unified Ed's Apex project, and one of the things they say in this project report, it says, there is inequity in how resources are allocated to schools, and that is typically along the lines of race and class. So, that's in their report. I have a big problem with that, because that says that this body right here, ever since I have been on it, under all the superintendents that have been here since I've been here, have been doing things purposely to be inequitable to some students. And that is not the case.
Amen.
That is absolutely, and I resent the fact that we are being led like blind hogs behind these people, saying that is the case, because that is not the case. I looked at the names of the people on that, that signed that letter that was in the paper today. And first of all, I had to smile, they had 132. I don't know if people remember, when I did the wheel tax thing, I got 14,000 signatures, so 130 didn't mean anything to me. I can get 10,000 this weekend. So 130 doesn't make that much difference to me. I think that was kind of a bullying kind of tactic, but whatever, it didn't bother me. But there were some awfully deep, deep pockets on there. Matter of fact, I had a friend to go through today and tell me how many of them went to private schools, how many of them were on board of private schools, how many are what I call serial board setters. They're on so many different boards that it's really hard to keep up with what they do. But those people that are worried about the inequities of the school, I just have a few things I would like to ask them. So I'll ask them. I don't know if any of them are in this room or not. I see John is back there. John, maybe you can ask at some of your Unified Ed meetings. They seem to want us to pay for transportation. That seems to be a big thing. They want us to pay for transportation to take these kids all over this town to these schools, and we cannot afford to do that. But with the deep pockets on there, I saw one fellow there that owns a car lot. He's been in the car business for years. I bet you he could get some real good prices on some vans, passenger vans. And the other deep pockets, and I mean, I'm talking about some deep pockets, people that are listed as millionaires, deep pockets there. I bet you that they could afford somebody to take these students wherever they wanted to go. There are also the people that were on there who were on boards of private schools. I know private schools that give a lot of scholarships away to minorities and disadvantaged students. They could do that. Or better yet, they could start a charter school and show us all how it's done. Show us how to do something where everything is equitable and everything is pie in the sky, good time Charlie Brown, and run a school and show us how it's done. They could do that. But no, really what they want is control. If they really wanted to help these students, y'all, they have the capacity. If money is the answer, and transportation is the answer, and getting kids where they need to be is the answer, that group, those 130 on the paper today, could do that. In the morning, they could write a check and do it. I, for one, do not want to bring in anybody to tell us what we need to do, just like when we lost Lee McDade, like I said, nothing beats institutional knowledge. How in the world are we gonna bring somebody in from Timbuktu to come in and tell us what we need to do? We know as a body on this school board what we need to do. We know the schools, we know the principals, we know what needs to be done. I do not know what needs to be done. We're even having to bring in somebody to tell us how to open a blank school, and we have 79 of them. Do we not know how to open a school, for crying out loud? We don't have anybody to take care of policy. I know that we've gotten multiple emails this week of how they have messed up retirement. I just don't understand what is going on. If I ran a business like that, if I left my customers sitting for hours and didn't show up and do my job like I was supposed to do, I would be out of business. We should have enough people for the amount of money we pay the people here in the central office to do these things. If we are inequitable, you tell us where we're inequitable. But like I say, the people in that paper today, they can fix this problem if money is the answer, if transportation is the answer, or if we're just flat doing it wrong. Like I say, they can get a charter. We'll give them a charter. State will give them a charter. Let them hire their own teachers, provide their own transportation, get their own building. Heck, some of them have enough buildings that they own that they could put a school in. So, you know, I'm sorry, but I'm a realist about these kinds of things. Like I say, if they really wanted to help some of these students, they could do it in the morning.
Thank you. Dr. Drake, do you want to address the transparency issue, or do you want me to? You want me to?
You can.
I will. Ms. Thurman, you got a good question. I brought that up at the first meeting. I said, do we want to have the media here? Do we want to have transparency? And so Dr. Towns-Edwards and Dr. Drake posed it to the group, and not their answer. This is what the group said. They said, while we are in the thinking process, before we are expressing our thoughts out loud, we would rather those thoughts not be published immediately. We'd like to, correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, is that's the understanding? They said, as soon as we get into where we're in a decision-making process, we want to be transparent, but while we're still thinking out loud, trying to decide it, they prefer not to. And of course, I jokingly said to them, I wish that your school board had that opportunity to be thinking out loud. Of course, we don't have that opportunity, but we're elected officials. But does that sort of answer your question somewhat? That these two ladies did pose that at the second meeting as to whether or not they wanted to have open meetings, and they said they wanted to wait until they had drawn some conclusions rather than in the thought process.
I don't know. I've never had a problem with people hearing my opinion. That's just the way it is, you know. So I don't understand why people are afraid. Just say what's on your mind. We're all adults, you know. Just say what's on your mind. We shouldn't have a problem meeting as a body of people going to represent this school. And if you're going to call me and tell me I've been inequitable and unfair, I want to know who you are and where you're coming from.
Well, and Dr. Johnson is opening up. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Johnson. You're opening up. You're pushing to have some open task force meetings.
100%.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
And
go ahead.
And I'll just say one thing again. I'll just say one thing again. This right here, the school board, you as a collective body, in the spring 2017, and working through strategic plan, said equity was a focus, and said the intentional and focused support. This is the exact statement on our most at-risk students in schools reflects our commitment to equity and success for all students. So, in closing the opportunity gap, the district identified that, and opportunity isn't, again, it isn't partisan. The focus is on the children, and we're all, it's been interesting to watch the last few weeks unwind, unravel, whatever they've been doing, because every member on this board, since I've been here, every conversation I have with you and all of you multiple times, many times, you care about children. And that's what we're all here for. And when we talk about closing the opportunity gap, that's for every child. That's for the child. That's a child at Signal Mountain that's a sophomore that's ready for an AP course that we've never offered. How do we get there? That's the husbandry program at Hickson. How do we bring that to life? That's the middle years program. That's every single program and activity that we do for every single child in every single place. So I know there's been a lot of conversations making it something completely different, but this is about every single, how can we sit here, I'm just going, how can we sit here and know that 70% of children that get an opportunity to take an early secondary opportunity goes on to college, I don't know how we can't be discussing this issue. When we look at our data and see that only 31% of our Asian students go, and that from our all students category, only 16.4% of them go. We know we need to accelerate that. I'm all in. As a father of a to-be first grader and a senior, when I look at this data, I want if we as a district know that 70% of our students to get access to this go on, we need to close this opportunity. This is an opportunity gap for every single subgroup. For every single subgroup.
Thank you. Ms. Robinson and then Ms. Lennon.
Sure. So I have a lot of thoughts on this topic, and Brian, you told us that you said that you want to hear from every single one of us, so I hope that every single one of us speaks. I think at this point we're only through half. I'm pretty sick of talking about Unify Ed, I'm sick of talking about Chattanooga 2.0, and I'm sick of hearing our board see them or whatever, these community groups want as a distraction. They are not our 10th board member. They do not get a say up here. Now, I do value absolutely what every single constituent in my district says and what those groups say, but it is absolute, whenever we allow that to be part of this conversation, which that is not. Brian did not ask us our opinion on those groups. Then we're allowing it to be a distraction to doing the work that we were elected to do. I was elected to create equity for my district, and my district has the highest needs. And if there's nothing else that I do while I'm here, it's going to be that work, or frankly, there's no point in me being here. So I 100% support us doing this equity study and the equity task force. I think that it's vital that we bring in someone who actually has done this work, because frankly, this board hasn't done this work. This school system hasn't done this work. If it did, 25% of our population in Hamilton County would opt to go to private schools or charter schools or some other option other than Hamilton County schools. And so if we don't start really addressing that fact and realizing that we do not know the answers, then there's no way that we'll accomplish this.
Thank you, Ms. Lennon.
I have to echo what Tiffany said, and as well, thank you so much, Dr. Johnson, for this great presentation and for the work that the Equity Task Force is doing, and for the people in our community, Unify Ed 2.0, the members in our community that keep bringing it to our attention that we need to do this work. Because that is also why I am running for that I ran for school board, is because I wanted every student to have the same opportunities, and we have to provide the same opportunities for all students, and it needs to be equitable. We have to find the solutions. We have to, if it means stepping outside and getting the input of other people, then that's what we have to do. We've done that for so many other things. When our superintendent search, we have to listen to the voices of the people, and that's what's very, very important. And so I'm all for moving forward with this. I don't like that we're slowing down the process, but I do like that you're going to bring it back in July, because that's not too slow. But we have to work on this. We have to jump on it immediately so that all students have the same opportunities.
Thank you. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong in the order, but I believe Ms. Mosley Jones, then Mr. Smith, then Mr. Testman, then Mr. Wingate.
I just want to say that I fully support the recommendations of the Equity Task Force and Dr. Johnson and anybody else. And I want to say, people keep asking the same question. Well, some people keep asking. I know I have board members who ask this question, and there are some people in the community that ask this question about where are the inequities. And I think I'm starting to become confused, because equity, once again, is not, or lack of, is not a racial issue. It's not a political issue. It's not it's a conglomerate of things. But having grown up here in the city of Chattanooga and been a product of the city of Chattanooga schools, or Chattanooga public schools, and being a product of the Hamilton County Department of Education, I am born and raised here. I can take you on a tour from North Hamilton to the west side. I can take you east. I can take you south. I can take you all over this county and show you inequities. And the sad fact is that some people ask this question when in their district, their schools and their students mimic populations of which I may serve, or Tiffany may serve, or all of us, pretty much all of us serve populations like that. Because in every pocket of our district, in every area of our district, there are pockets where there are inequities. So I'm confused on why people keep saying, well, what are the inequities? And then there's always, like Tiffany said, this distraction of data, and black and white speaks, it just speaks. And so the same thing the NAACP has presented to us is the same thing that was in the Apex, which is the same thing that I have conversations with church members about, or my friends about, or my parents about, or adopted parents or surrogate parents that don't even look like me. We have these same conversations. So I don't understand why people are confused on what they are. But I promise you, if you really want to know, I'll take you on a tour and show you. At this point, it's not about Unified Ed. It's not about 2.0. It ain't about the NAACP, 100 Black women, I don't care who it is. It ain't about an organization. It's about doing what is right by kids. When I first became a member of this board, we sat right in this boardroom in our first board retreat. Scott Benny, you was over it. We sitting here in a square table. You remember that? You remember that, Dr. Holloway?
I do.
And they asked us, you asked us, Scott, what were the weaknesses of this district? And I remember sitting right here on this corner, and I said, the lack of equity in this school system. That was September 2014. Because I'm running for re-election again, and we still talking about this. And when I said it that day, people looked at me baffled. They didn't understand. And I had to literally say, like Brown versus Board of Education, Plessy versus Ferguson, Mapp versus the Board of Education. And they still looked at me baffled. So I understand that people are confused, but I don't understand why in 2018 you're still confused. At this point, it is our due diligence as elected officials to follow through what our constituents across this county are asking us. And I don't care if they pay for their kids to go to Chattanooga Christian or if their kids go to Westview. Clearly, they have an interest in the public education system, which is for the common and greater good. We have to do what is right by kids. We cannot keep doing this. It's cyclic. And no, we can't fix their home environments. We love to. We try to do everything we can in the academic arena to do that. I would love, as a social worker, I would love to fix every problem. But I know that I can't, and I know that we can't, but I know that we can do everything academically to make sure they're prepared. And when we have graduations and those kids cross that stage, my heart is so full because I'm so excited for them, but then I sit back and wonder, did we do everything as a Department of Education that we needed to do to make sure that on the next morning when they wake up, that they're ready for whatever they're about to walk out into? So we gotta do that now. This one piece of data tells us that we gotta do better. So I support whatever recommendation it is. I'm willing to look at 2, 3, 4, 10 options if you bring them back. But we have got to do what is right by kids. And it ain't about no disrespect to any organization or group of people. It ain't about y'all. It's about just doing what is right by kids.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
I think Joe Wingate.
Joe, before you. Okay. Go ahead.
I would just say, Rhonda, I agree with you in the fact that we got to control the narrative. One of the things that has been interesting to me over this last month is the narrative that has been propagated by entities not including the school board or school system is the wrong conversation. And those were the things that used to aggravate me as an employee of the system, and then just as a community member, that outside influences and then also school board, school system, all of a sudden the conversation changed because somebody mentions a hot button topic or something that's hypersensitive to what's going on, and all of a sudden now everybody gets distracted, and the conversation that's going on in the public's not really what the conversation's all about. And so my challenge would just be to this board, we all have schools in our district, every one of us do, that have needs. They just do. Some are academic, some are athletic, some are, we sat here and listened to a group come this last school year and talk about the lack of instruments and music programs and sheet music that we have across the county. And I think about one of my schools, East Brainerd Elementary, that's the largest elementary school in the county right now, didn't have a cafeteria monitor last year. So teachers were rotating in there doing cafeteria duty. I mean, that's not equitable. I mean, how's that equitable for those students when their teachers don't get that 25-minute duty-free lunch, you know, or extra time to plan? Just all those things. I mean, we can all of us, you know, it's already been mentioned. I mean, like Sell Creek doesn't have the athletic facilities they need. No, I know nobody feels sorry for anybody in District 7, I get it, but East Hamilton didn't have any facilities when they opened, right? I mean, there was not one field out there to have a game on. So we can go down the list. All of us have schools that have needs. So there are inequities. What bothers me is that outside influences change the narrative about what the inequities are, and they make them into things that get people on opposite sides of the room, kind of like a middle school dance, you know. Everybody's standing, boys on one side and girls on the other, standing and staring at each other. Nobody's out there actually doing anything. And so the conversation about equity is about how do we provide every school with what they need, the students and the teachers, to give them the opportunity to be successful. And that's all our charge is. That's all our charge is provide an opportunity. We can't control outcomes. Can't do that. And it's not our charge to provide outcomes. Our charge is to provide opportunity. And so what does that look like? And so, you know, if we were to bring in an outside person, if they want to help us figure out how we keep staff in some of our hard-to-staff schools that we keep having turnover in, if they've got some ideas about that, I'm all for that, you know. If they've got some ideas about what it would look like in some of our schools to be able to keep them open in the evening so families come make use of the library. And that, I'm not talking about inner city or high poverty schools, I'm talking about all schools. I'm open to that. If they want to come in and start bringing some other ideas in that I don't agree with, I'm not for that. And I think there are plenty here. And some of the stuff that's been thrown out there is a little sensationalized, and I don't think there's a lot of support for it on this board. I would just say, I trust every one of you guys. I've had the opportunity to work with you for the last 2 years. I know your heart, that you all want to do what's best, not just when we're sitting at this dais, but I've had the opportunity to do some things with you guys outside and in our own private time to help schools out. And so I trust you guys. And let's control the narrative about what the conversation is, because you're right, Rhonda. We do know what needs to be done. We just need to make sure that we don't get distracted by other folks who try to take what the real issues are and make them into something else. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Dr. Johnson, you wanted to hear, I think you've heard, good dialogue. I'm proud of our community and seemingly the way that business industry has stepped up in a lot of ways and trying to help us, and I'm proud of that. And you know, the biggest thing that strikes me is I look at the people that are here in the galley, if you will, today, right now, and there's probably, I don't know, maybe 75 people here. I'm not a good guesstimate at numbers, but that's what it looks like. And now look at this letter and these 130 signatures, and man, it just begs me to ask the question. Change has got to start with me. It's got to start with me. And I just wonder how many of these 130 people have somebody in their life. How many of you have somebody in your life that you're loving on, that you're mentoring, that you're trying to encourage, that you're trying to help today? How many? You don't have to answer that publicly. But if we just pick one, if we just picked one, everybody in here picked one kid, one family, these 130 people that signed this letter, they have all the answers, picked one person, one family.
That's not the narrative. That's
Listen, I'm talking now. To love on, to encourage, to support. And then we could help bring about equity. But I think it has to start with me. It has to start with me. So I encourage everybody to get involved. Love on somebody. Just love on somebody. That's all I'm saying.
Thanks, sir. Next, we're going a little over the work, but we've got Mr. Testman here. We'll try to conclude.
I will be brief. I'm just going to say this, I do support my superintendent. I think he has of all the jobs in this county, and maybe many of the surrounding counties, this gentleman has a lot of weight on his back.
Amen.
He came to us with vision and ideas. And I think the greatest thing that he brought, the thing that I love, is a return to a focus on doing something to change preparing children for postgraduate from high school. The talk of vocational training is the piece that has been missing since it was removed from the table years back. We have been educating kids knowing that we were not giving them everything they needed. And I think this return with the Future Ready program, I just want to say, if we can get our businesses and our industry people behind it, which I think they will be, I think it has the potential of doing great things for this county. And Superintendent, I want you to know that I will follow your leadership in these discussions. I appreciate the good information that you provide. And believe me, I've been doing these type things for a long time with my life. You don't work with kids unless you love them.
That's right.
You don't work in schools with poverty unless you believe in equity. You can't do it. I've washed kids' clothes before and dried them because they didn't have a washing machine at home or nobody there to wash them. You do what you have to do as a building level principal and as a teacher to make kids prepared for school. You want every kid to be successful, not just some. You want everyone to be. But I know this, that if you have a bad discussion about a topic and you get wrong information or if you get neglected information, you're going to end up making a bad decision. This school board, sometimes I know it drags out, but we want to have good discussion. We want good information. We want, and we have at this time, a superintendent that's looking to the future. My advice to all of us here tonight, let's pledge ourselves, just like Brother Joe mentioned. We have got to get together and realize that everybody can help our kids in our community and our schools. Every one of us, all of us, not just the people here. You're the folks that are interested. I really expected this building to be packed. I remember the days when we met at Tyner High School, and buddy, that whole building would be packed. But I appreciate what you had to say, and the one thing that I really think is a plus, and that goes back to your recommendations that have been brought up before, I think we do need an open task force. I hope that we can have as many meetings as possible where it's open to the public, open to the press, and that we have opportunity to have great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Teskey. If I could make a real brief summation here of what some of you said, there are two things that I like to live by, wise sayings. In a variety of counselors, there's wisdom, and another wise saying is to answer before listening is following in shame. Now, we need to listen. We need to listen to our constituents. We need to listen to our public. But then I agree with what Rhonda and Tiffany and several others have said, Joe said, is that the responsibility falls back on this board, and we have to make the decision. Do we listen? Do we get wise advice? Yes, we do. We will hope to get some from the task force. We hope to get some from other areas. But then we need to search our heart for what is the best and the right thing for children. And I think that's what all 9 of us want to do. Dr. Johnson, you want to add anything?
Yeah, just one last thing. We knew coming here, digging into this work was hard, it's challenging, it's change. I again commend this board for being willing to have this conversation. I'm telling you right now, there's not a whole lot of boards that are digging in this way, and so I appreciate it. I'll just paint this vision. My hope, my prayer is 2-3 years from now, the question you're asking me is, Dr. Johnson, we saw that slide. I remember that. I want you to remember this day and ingrain those numbers in your head right there. And when we talk about closing the opportunity gap, I want you to be saying, hey, Brian, why didn't we move our all students? Why is our all student number still at 16? That's what I want to be held accountable to. Why is that number 40%, 50%, 60%, when we know 70% of students that get access get? Why are Hispanic students at 10? Well, 3 years ago, Brian, it was at 10.3%. That's what I want you to hold me accountable to. This is the work. This is the work. This is why we do the work. So thank you for having this conversation. And I will add that, I guess at the board, at the formal session, that I would ask the board to vote their continued support of the work and the recommendations going forward.
Okay. End the work session, take a 5-minute break, we'll start with the regular session.